The man charged in Tupac Shakur's murder is speaking out from behind bars for the first time. Duane Keffe D Davis insists he was 300 miles away when the rapper was shot.
A grainy security camera clip allegedly showing Snoop Dogg and Duane Keffe D Davis together at a Las Vegas hotel just hours before Tupac Shakur's fatal shooting has suddenly surfaced online, sparking intense debate across social media. The footage, reportedly recorded on September 7, 1996, appears to capture what looks like a brief conversation between the two men near the MGM Grand Casino around 6 p.m. that evening, roughly 5 hours before Pac would be gunned down on Flamingo Road. While the video quality makes definitive identification nearly impossible, internet detectives have pointed to distinctive clothing, body language, and the timestamp as evidence that this could be the smoking gun that finally connects Snoop to the events of that tragic night. The clip has already ignited a firestorm of speculation about what really happened in Vegas, with many asking, if this footage is real, what were Snoop and Keffe D discussing just hours before one of hip-hop's most devastating losses? In early 2025, former Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight made explosive allegations from behind bars that sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community. During an interview with The Art of Dialogue, published in 1856, February, Knight accused Snoop Dogg of actively trying to bail out Keffe D, the man currently charged with orchestrating Tupac's murder. Knight claimed that Snoop and others connected to Sean Diddy Combs were working behind the scenes to secure Keffe D's release because he was talking too much about what really went down that night in Vegas. Since I've been in here, Snoop and other people been trying to bail the guy out, Keffe D, cause he talking too much, Knight stated during the phone interview. Knight went further, suggesting that Snoop's motivation stemmed from fear of what Keffe D might reveal during his upcoming trial. He insinuated that the more Keffe D talks, the more certain high-profile figures in hip-hop could get implicated in events surrounding Pac's death. Knight specifically linked Snoop to Diddy through mutual connections like Ray J, claiming they all had reasons to keep Keffe D quiet. The allegations didn't stop there. Knight also accused Snoop of lying about visiting Tupac in the hospital before his death, calling it complete fabrication. According to Knight, Snoop never went to the hospital to see Pac during those final days, contradicting Snoop's own public statements about fainting when he saw the severity of Tupac's injuries. Knight's version of events painted a picture of Snoop as someone who wasn't as close to Pac as he's claimed over the years. LAD Bible and other outlets picked up Knight's claims about a supposed devastating recording that could further implicate Snoop in the events of 1996. While no such recording has surfaced publicly, the mere suggestion has fueled conspiracy theories about what evidence might exist. Knight's statement that he knew Snoop had something to do with it, that's why he left LA and went to New Orleans, added more fuel to the fire. Snoop responded swiftly to these accusations, firing back in the comments section of The Art of Dialogue's Instagram post. "This nigga won't stop talking about me mad cause I own Death Row. I realize you're real lies," Snoop wrote, dismissing Knight's claims as motivated by jealousy over Snoop's acquisition of Death Row Records in 2022. The beef between Snoop and Suge escalated even further when Snoop released his album Is It a Crime in May 2025, which featured a track titled Shut Yo Bitch Ass Up that directly addressed Knight. In the song, Snoop rapped about buying everything Suge once owned and accused him of snitching from prison. The diss track made it clear that Snoop wasn't backing down from Knight's allegations, instead going on the offensive. Duane Keffe D Davis has been at the center of the Tupac murder investigation since his arrest in September 2023. What makes Keffe D's case unique is that he's been talking about his involvement in Tupac's death for years, long before he was ever charged. In multiple interviews and even in his 2019 memoir, Keffe D has openly discussed being in the white Cadillac that pulled up alongside Tupac's BMW on that fatal night. Keffe D has mentioned Snoop Dogg in several interviews over the years, suggesting some level of personal interaction between them. These mentions have led many to believe there was more of a relationship between Snoop and Keffe D than previously acknowledged. The fact that Keffe D would reference Snoop at all has raised questions about how well connected these two really were in the mid-90s LA and Vegas scene. The Art of Dialogue, a popular YouTube channel focused on hip-hop culture and untold stories, has played a significant role in amplifying theories about Snoop's potential involvement. While the channel presents itself as simply documenting hip-hop history, critics argue it's spreading unverified conspiracy theories that could damage reputations without solid evidence. One theory that's gained traction suggests that Snoop was trying to protect Keffe D by attempting to secure his release on bail. The logic goes that if Keffe D starts cooperating fully with prosecutors and naming names, Snoop could potentially be pulled into the investigation. This theory positions Keffe D as holding information that could be damaging not just to Snoop, but to several other figures in the industry who were around during that era. Another angle being explored is whether Snoop had prior knowledge of the attack on Tupac, or somehow allowed it to happen by not warning him. Proponents of this theory point to the alleged cooling of Snoop and Tupac's relationship in the weeks before the shooting, suggesting that if Snoop knew something was being planned, his silence could be interpreted as complicity. However, there's no concrete evidence to support these claims beyond speculation and pattern finding. The conspiracy theories have taken on a life of their own online, with some suggesting that Orlando Anderson, the Crips member who was beaten by Tupac and his crew at the MGM Grand that night, was merely a scapegoat. These theories claim the real masterminds behind the hit were bigger names in the industry who used Anderson and the Crips as cover. Anderson was killed in an unrelated gang shooting in 1998, conveniently eliminating him as a witness before he could ever face charges for Tupac's murder. There's also speculation that Keffe D is just a pawn in a much larger plan orchestrated by East Coast figures. This theory ties back to the infamous Bad Boy Death Row rivalry and suggests the shooting was about more than just a gang beef stemming from the MGM Grand fight. Instead, it positions Tupac's murder as a calculated move in the broader hip-hop civil war of the mid-90s. On September 7, 1996, Tupac Shakur attended the Mike Tyson vs. Bruce Seldon heavyweight fight at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Tupac was there with Suge Knight, ahead of Death Row Records, along with a large entourage that included various members of the Mob Piru gang. The fight itself was anticlimactic, with Tyson winning by knockout in the first round. After the fight, around 8:50 p.m., Tupac and his crew got into a violent altercation with Orlando Baby Lane Anderson in the lobby area of the MGM Grand. Anderson was a member of the Southside Compton Crips, a rival gang to the Bloods-affiliated Mob Piru. The beating was captured on the casino's surveillance cameras and would later prove crucial in understanding what triggered the events that followed. The fight happened because Trevon Trey Lane, a Death Row associate and Mob Piru member, spotted Anderson and told Tupac that Anderson had been involved in trying to steal a Death Row chain at a Foot Locker in Lakewood, California earlier that year. Tupac approached Anderson, asked if he was from the South, meaning Southside Crips, and then punched him in the face. Tupac, Suge, and their entourage proceeded to stomp and kick Anderson while he was on the ground before hotel security broke it up. After the confrontation, Tupac and his crew left the MGM Grand. The exact timeline of the next few hours is somewhat murky, but they eventually made stops at the Luxor Hotel where Tupac's fiancée Kidda Jones was staying, and at a house Suge Knight owned in Las Vegas. During this time, according to prosecutors, Keffe D was obtaining a gun that would be used in the retaliation for the casino beating. Around 11 p.m., Tupac was riding in the passenger seat of Suge Knight's black BMW 750 ILL as they headed toward Club 662, a nightclub the Knight owned. They were pulled over by bike patrol officers for playing their music too loud and not having visible license plates. The plates were found in the trunk, and after some friendly banter with the officers, they were let go without a ticket. This traffic stop would be one of the last mundane moments of Tupac's life. At approximately 11:15 p.m., while stopped at a red light at a PC, the intersection of East Flamingo Road and Koval Lane, just 1 block from the Las Vegas Strip, a white Cadillac pulled up alongside the BMW. Reed hair with a damn row. Milo White Steven, writer arson. YouTube for Tupac shooting location, East Flamingo Koval Lane news coverage. quote, 6 seconds. A gunman in the back seat of the Cadillac opened fire with a .40 caliber Glock, unleashing more than a dozen rounds at the BMW. 4 bullets struck Tupac, hitting him twice in the chest, once in the arm and once in the thigh. Suge Knight was grazed in the head by a bullet fragment, but suffered only minor injuries. Despite being shot in the head, Knight managed to make a U-turn and attempted to drive toward University Medical Center. However, they were quickly stopped by police at Las Vegas Boulevard and Harmon Avenue, and paramedics rushed Tupac to the hospital. The damage was catastrophic. 3 of the bullets had shredded Tupac's right lung, which surgeons had to remove entirely, tearing through his Thug Life tattoo to perform the emergency surgery. For 6 agonizing days, Tupac fought for his life in the ICU, while the hip-hop world held its breath. Doctors initially gave him a 50-50 chance of survival. On September 13, 1996, at 4:03 p.m., Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead from respiratory failure that led to cardiac arrest. He was only 25 years old, had lost one of its brightest stars, and the circumstances of his death would spawn decades of speculation, conspiracy theories, and unanswered questions. One of the most persistent conspiracy theories surrounding Tupac's murder involves Sean Diddy Combs allegedly offering a bounty for hits on West Coast rappers. This allegation has been ventilated primarily through statements made by Keffe D himself, who has claimed in interviews that Diddy offered him $1 million to take out both Tupac and Suge Knight. Diddy has repeatedly and categorically denied these allegations, calling them completely false. The theory gained renewed attention when Tupac's family hired a private investigator in October 2023 to examine potential links between the murder and Diddy. While this doesn't prove a connection, it shows that even Tupac's own family has questions about who might have been involved beyond just the shooter. The investigator's mandate was specifically to look into whether Diddy had any role in orchestrating the hit. Media outlets like USA Today have covered the allegations about a supposed Diddy-Crips connection, though they're careful to frame it as allegations rather than proven fact. The theory suggests that Diddy, wanting to eliminate his biggest rival during the East Coast-West Coast beef, used his connections to Crips gang members to arrange the hit. Keffe D's statements about being offered money by Diddy are the primary source for this Crip theory, making it heavily dependent on the credibility of a self-confessed participant in the murder. Some conspiracy theorists have accused major news networks like CNN and CBS of hiding evidence that could implicate either Snoop or Diddy in the events surrounding Tupac's death. These claims suggest that there's been a coordinated media effort to protect certain powerful figures in the industry by not pursuing certain lines of death care, investigation, or not reporting on specific pieces of evidence. However, there's no concrete proof that any news organization has deliberately suppressed information about the case. The upcoming trial of Keffe D, scheduled for 2026, has been positioned by some as the moment when all the secrets will finally come out. The theory goes that Keffe D, facing a potential death penalty, will start naming names of everyone involved, including potentially high-profile celebrities who had knowledge of or participated in planning the attack. The expectation is that the trial could expose a conspiracy much larger than just a gang retaliation for the MGM Grand beating. Some observers believe the delay in the trial to 2026 isn't just about legal procedures and evidence gathering, but represents an active cover-up. They suggest that powerful people are working behind the scenes to prevent certain information from coming out, either by pressuring Keffe D to stay quiet or by influencing the legal process itself. There's no evidence to support this claim, but the delay has certainly given conspiracy theories more time to develop and spread. Official timelines of the events of September 7, 1996, are criticized by some for forgetting or deliberately unpursued, omitting Snoop Dogg's whereabouts and activities that night. While it's true that Snoop wasn't in Las Vegas that night, according to all available evidence, the fact that he's rarely mentioned in official accounts of the evening has been interpreted by some as suspicious rather than simply factual. There's also a theory that Snoop's various tributes and homages to Death Row over the years, particularly since acquiring the label in 2022, are actually an alibi designed to distance himself from any involvement in Tupac's death. By positioning himself as someone who honors Death Row's legacy and Tupac's memory, the theory goes he's trying to make it seem impossible that he could have had any role in Pac's murder. His acquisition of the label and his public statements about preserving its history are seen through this lens as strategic moves. Rather than genuine sentiment, the relationship between Snoop Dogg and Tupac Shakur wasn't always complicated. When Tupac signed with Death Row Records after being released from prison in 1995, he and Snoop formed a strong artistic bond. They said, collaborated on tracks, appeared together at events, and publicly presented a united front for Death Row in the West Coast hip-hop scene. However, beneath the surface, tensions were beginning to develop that would eventually create distance between them. A key moment in the deterioration of their relationship came during a trip Snoop took to New York in 1996. During this visit, Snoop gave an interview where he made statements that were interpreted by some in the Death Row camp as disloyal, or at least tone-deaf, given the intensity of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry at the time. The interview with radio personality Angie Martinez would later be revisited in various hip-hop documentaries and discussions about what went wrong between Snoop and Tupac. In that interview, Snoop expressed the desire for peace between the coasts and suggested he wanted to work with East Coast artists. While this might seem reasonable in hindsight, at the time it was seen as Snoop breaking ranks with Death Row's aggressive stance against Bad Boy Records and East Coast rap in general. Tupac, who was deeply invested in the rivalry and had personal beef with Biggie and Diddy, reportedly felt betrayed by Snoop's conciliatory tone. The context of the MTV Video Music Awards in 1996 added more fuel to the fire. The VMAs that year were a powder keg, with tensions between Bad Boy and Death Row artists reaching a fever pitch. The atmosphere was so charged that many feared violence could break out at any moment. In this environment, any perceived disloyalty or fence-sitting was interpreted as choosing the other side. Snoop's statements about wanting unity were seen as naive at best and traitorous at worst. Timelines constructed by hip-hop historians and journalists have noted a definite cooling in the Snoop-Tupac relationship in the weeks leading up to the Vegas shooting. People close to both artists have described a growing distance, with Tupac pulling back from Snoop and spending more time with other members of the Death Row crew. Whether this was due to the New York interview, jealousy over attention and status, or simply the natural evolution of their relationship remains debated. One theory that's been floated is that Snoop felt envious of Tupac's rapid rise to become Death Row's biggest star. When Tupac signed with the label and released All Eyes on Me, he quickly became the face of Death Row in many ways, potentially overshadowing Snoop, who had been the label's breakthrough artist with Dogg Style. Some observers have suggested this created resentment, though there's no direct evidence that Snoop harbored serious jealousy toward Pac. The media environment of the time turned every comment and gesture into ammunition for the ongoing East Coast-West Coast conflict. Even innocent statements could be twisted and used to deepen divisions. Snoop has explained in various interviews over the years that his intention was never to betray Tupac or Death Row, but that the intense media scrutiny and the polarized climate meant that nuance was impossible. Everything was interpreted in the most dramatic, divisive way possible. In numerous interviews since Tupac's death, Snoop has addressed the state of his relationship with Pac in those final weeks. He's acknowledged that there was some distance between them, but he's consistently denied that it represented any serious beef or betrayal. According to Snoop, the cooling was more about Tupac being busy with his own projects and Snoop starting to think about his own future beyond Death Row. Snoop's most detailed account of the night of Tupac's shooting and its immediate aftermath came during a 2022 appearance on Logan Paul's Impulsive podcast. In that interview, Snoop described traveling to Las Vegas. After hearing about the shooting, he said he first met with Suge Knight, who had been grazed by a bullet but was trying to stay positive, telling everyone that Tupac would be fine since he'd survived being shot before. "We're feeling like it's going to be all right, until we go to the hospital and see that he ain't all right," Snoop recounted during the podcast. He described seeing Tupac with tubes in him and immediately sensing that his friend wasn't really there anymore. Snoop said he fainted upon seeing the severity of Tupac's condition, and that Tupac's program's mother, Afeni Shakur, had to help him up in walking to the bathroom, where she had a conversation with him about being strong. This account directly contradicts Snoop Knight's claims that Snoop never visited Tupac in the hospital. The question of who's telling the truth has been debated endlessly online. Snoop has no apparent reason to lie about visiting the hospital, as it wouldn't change anything about the investigation or public perception of him. However, Knight's insistence that it's false has planted doubt in some people's minds. In content featuring Angie Martinez over 50 years, Snoop has returned to the topic of his 1996 New York interview and the fallout from it. He's explained that he was genuinely trying to promote peace and didn't realize how his words would be weaponized. He's expressed regret, not for what he said, but for the timing and the context that made it seem like he was turning his back on Tupac and Death Row during a critical moment. Snoop has also addressed the broader question of loyalty and his relationship with Death Row. His decision to leave the label in 1998, just 2 years after Tupac's death, and with Suge Knight heading to prison, was interpreted by some as abandoning ship. Snoop's explanation has always been that Death Row had become toxic, and that staying would have destroyed his career and possibly his life. He's pointed to the fates of other Death Row artists who stayed too long as evidence that leaving was the right move. The acquisition of Death Row Records by Snoop in 2022 was meant to be a full circle moment, a chance for him to preserve the label's legacy while moving it in a new direction. However, as Suge Knight's accusations have shown, even this has been reinterpreted through a suspicious lens. What Snoop saw as honoring his past, critics view as an attempt to control the narrative and protect himself from damaging revelations. So what about that leaked footage supposedly showing Snoop and Keffe D together hours before the shooting? With Keffe D's trial set to kick off in 2026, there's a real possibility this video could become crucial evidence that finally exposes what really went down that night. If this footage is authentic and shows some kind of planning or coordination between Snoop and Keffe D just hours before Tupac was gunned down, it could completely flip everything we thought we knew about the case. The timing is just too suspicious to ignore. Why would Snoop and the alleged mastermind of Tupac's murder be having a conversation at the MGM Grand the same day as the shooting? Maybe this video will finally reveal whether Snoop had advanced knowledge of what was about to happen, or even worse, whether he played a role in setting up his supposed friend. As the trial approaches and more evidence comes to light, this leaked footage might be the smoking gun that answers the question hip-hop has been asking for almost 30 years. Who really killed Tupac? And how deep does the conspiracy actually go?